Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to be comparing two wrist sensor golf training aids that you can pick up online right now for about the same price, around 300 to 350 bucks right now as of filming in October of 2025. The first one is a very well reviewed product. This is the Hack Motion wrist sensor, and this is a sensor that uh, goes right on your wrist, and at the top of your backswing will tell you if your lead wrist is in a flat, a bowed, or cupped position at the top. I will say it also can help you with your takeaway and keeping the club face square in the takeaway. It can help you with your downswing if you're casting or maybe don't have enough width. And obviously, also at impact, it will tell you where your wrist angle is at. So, all really cool stuff. And in general, I really like the Hack Motion. And you'll see in this video that I think it does exactly what it advertises it does online. So the second swing trainer that we're going to look at is the Moxi Swing Motion. It goes for about $350 online. And this one, very similarly to the Hack Motion, it has these sensors here, but you get two of them. And you get a couple straps, so two straps for your arm and your wrist. You get a strap for your back and a strap for your belt. The Moxi actually is kind of like the same thing as the Hack Motion, but more, because you can use it as a wrist sensor. You can use it to check your wrist angles at the top and at impact, but then you can also use it to check your body. So in today's video, I'm comparing the two. I'm going to first compare the wrist sensing action, because I think if it's a one-to-one there and they're both equally accurate, then really at the end of the day with the swing motion, you're getting more for your dollar. Okay, so we have the Hack Motion calibrated at this point. You can see if I have my wrist flat, and that's flat right there, I can bend it into more flexion, or I can bend it into more extension. I can turn my forearm left and right. So this is calibrated. We're going to hit a couple shots without thinking about wrist angles at all, and see what the Hack Motion says my issue is. And if it's accurate, it should tell me that at the top of my backswing, I have a cupped wrist. So I definitely hit that one fat. And as you can see there, my club path is 10 degrees in to out. So let's take a look at the data. And you can see the takeaway is fine, address is fine, but at the top, I am too extended. I do get into a much more flexed position in the mid downswing, and then into impact, I'm definitely more flexed, but really cupped at the top of my backswing. And I would say the casting, to be honest, it's probably because I am coming so far from the inside that it's picking up and telling me that I'm casting here. So my impact on that one was horrible. You can actually see on the impact screen there, I'm completely off the toe. But if we look at the data here again, at the top, it's showing me that I'm too extended. So I am in a cupped position at the top. Impact was relatively okay. I mean, obviously the ball flight wasn't good, and it didn't go very far because of how far I hit the ball off the toe. But I would say that this is pretty accurate. I'm definitely cupping my wrist at the top. So now let's hit a couple shots in which I'm introducing some flexion of that wrist angle at the top. Okay, so that seems to have been a much better strike. Still a little toey there from the impact cam, but you can see here the top, I'm definitely less extended at the top, and coming into impact, I'm getting into a good position again. So let's try this one more time. We're gonna do a lot more flexion in the backswing. And that one felt a lot better. Again, much better impact. You can see the ball is in the center of the club face there. These are the first couple swings of the day. Still a little extended, 2 degrees. Okay, so finally, I got into a bowed position at the top. But as you can see there, when I am really bowed, look how far that ball hooked. And for me, I would say the reason why that's happening wasn't a bad strike. I mean, the ball is in the middle of the face. The reason why that's happening is because of how far I'm swinging in to out, which is pretty significant. I would say, you know, on average right now with my swing, I'm swinging anywhere between 8 and 12 degrees into out, which is way too much. But all in, I really like the hack motion. I think it's very accurate. So that's that device. Let's move over to the Moxi now. Okay, so now we have the Moxi wrist sensors on the glove. And what we're going to do here is, again, I'm going to take a couple swings with this and see if it's correctly picking up what my wrist is doing at the top of my backswing. So I would say already I'm very impressed by the fidelity of these sensors. If I hold my wrist here and say I go into flexion, you can see that the wrist on the screen does that. And again, if I go into extension, you can see that the wrist there is correctly showing that, and I can turn my forearm as well. So it seems to be pretty accurate out of the gate just from sitting on standby, but we're going to do the same test here. I'm going to hit a couple balls, not thinking about my wrist angles, allowing my wrist to cup and see if the Moxi device picks up on that. Okay. So we can see there that it definitely is telling me that at the top I'm too extended. So that's correct. That's really good. And it picked up the shot perfectly fine. So let's hit one more like that. And that was a terrible strike. I think I actually didn't even have the ball in the impact zone on the iMini, but the Moxi picked up the shot because it clearly felt the vibration of hitting the ball here. And you can see again, I'm too extended. So that would be correct in my mind. So let's now try and hit a ball with some flexion added in at the top of my backswing. So there you go. You can't argue with the results there. Again, at the top, I'm in range. So now I am flexed or bowed at the top. But again, you're seeing the same thing here. I definitely hit that ball pretty fat, and I was coming really far from the inside. 2.9 degrees in out. I don't know about that. I think it was quite a bit more. Maybe by the time I got to the ball, I hit the ground so fat behind the ball that maybe that club path was moving a little bit more left by the time I hit it. But so the Moxi sensors, I would say that they are working pretty well and in a similar, if not the same fashion as the hack motion. Now, what's interesting about these sensors is you can actually use them to measure other parts of your body, including the hips and your torso. And you can either just focus on the torso, just focus on the hips, or you can focus on both at the same time and not have the sensors on your wrist at all. So that's pretty cool. And to be honest, they work in a very similar fashion. So we'll record some of that footage too, just so you can see what's happening there. Okay, so now what we're going to try and do is one of the other modes with the Moxi Swing Motion, because you can just test torso, you can test hip movement, or you can test both at the same time with the body separation X factor measurement. So let's click on that. And what I have is I have the first sensor on my back using the backpack straps, and then the second one is right on the back of my waistband there. So we're going to hit next. We're going to stand up straight to initialize this. And now you can see my side tilt from left to right. You can see forward tilt, backward tilt, and you can also see movement of the hips. So let's hit a ball with this and see what sort of data it spits out. Okay. So here, again, this is the X factor, which is measuring connection between the hips and my torso. You can see that I'm actually getting a two twisted result here. I am leading with my pelvis, and you can see the tempo, you can see hip speed and torso speed. So that is really cool. Let's click on the AI tips. Let's see what that does. Some tips on how to correct the issues that it's seeing in my swing. I think that this is awesome. This is something that you don't get with the hack motion because, again, it's only measuring the wrist angle. So I think that the Moxi Swing Motion is really a dual purpose device. So I won't go into a deep dive with the hips and the chest more than that. I think the main point here is you can either just focus on the chest, you can either just focus on the hips, and test with those. But all in, I think that this is just really cool. And assuming that it's as accurate as it is with the wrist movements, this is something that I could take and work on here in my garage, hitting into my net. So final impressions of these two swing trainers, I would say that the Moxi and Hack Motion swing trainers, both being relatively in the same price point, it really comes down to functionality. It comes down to the app, whether or not the data is accurate, and all that you can measure between these two devices. I would say between the two, I slightly prefer the Hack Motions app. I think it's just ever so slightly cleaner. I think it just looks a little bit more polished than the Moxies. However, the Moxi gives the same data, and I would say is just as accurate as the Hack Motion, at least on the wrist uh, measurements that it's doing. But the Moxi Swing Motion actually gives you a bit more. It gives you that chest and that hip rotation measurements that the Hack Motion currently doesn't provide. So between the two, I would say if I had to pick one of these, I would actually go with the Moxi Swing Motion. For me, it just seems like a better deal. That's the one I'm going to end up keeping. But to be honest, both of these products I think are great products for the average golfer, and I could recommend them to anybody. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Um, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.